To me.
All right, we are all set. Welcome everybody to today's live webinar, Intro to Microsoft Word, Part 1. So this is part of a 3-part series that we're going to cover Microsoft Word. Joining us today is Susan Winkler, who is teaching the class. She is our technology librarian. My name is Rebecca Van Dusen. I'm a library associate here at the Champaign Public Library. So I assist Susan with teaching and hosting the classes. So you've probably seen me around before. I also help at the information desk, so you've probably seen me out there as well. Before we get started, I want to cover a couple of things about Zoom. So if you notice at the bottom of your Zoom window, you'll see some controls. At the bottom left corner, there will be options for you to adjust your microphone. And then more towards the center of your screen, there's going to be a couple of buttons there. There's a chat button and a raise hand button. So throughout the class, while Susan is teaching, I will be in the background helping to answer questions. And you can pose those questions by using those 2 buttons. So the chat button will open the chat box where you can type your question in, and then I can, of course, help answer that via chat, or I can post that to Susan. I often do the question to Susan because it's just easier that way, and most people have those type of questions. We also have that raise hand option for answering questions as well. So if you wanted to speak your question out loud using your microphone, go ahead and hit that raise hand button. That's going to indicate to me that you'd rather speak out loud. I know sometimes it's easier to verbalize a question rather than trying to type it out. So feel free to use that button. The main thing, though, is don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what we're here for. So throughout the webinar, if you need to see something repeated, or if you had an additional question on top of what we're already covering, please let us know, because we'll try our best to help answer that question. And I should say we are also recording this webinar. So even though you're seeing it live, we will also have the recording ready later. We usually send out an email with the handouts and the recording so that if you want to catch it later or rewatch it, you can do that. It's also going to go up onto our YouTube channel. So on our YouTube channel, you can watch that at any time once it's uploaded. Okay, I think I've covered pretty much everything. And of course, if I haven't, you can feel free to put it in the chat, or Susan, I'm sure, will remind me later. But let's go ahead and get started. How are you today, Susan?
Good. I'm doing well. How about yourself, Rebecca?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Glad to hear it. I think the only thing I would mention is the live captioning. So if anyone would like to see words along the bottom of your screen for what we are saying as we say it, there's a little closed caption button. It says it has a little CC, it's a little square. You can click on that and just say enable subtitles, and that'll get you whatever we're saying out loud down below. So that was the only thing.
Good point. Yeah, I think I forget that one sometimes.
Yeah, and I always enable it for myself too, because I think it helps me slow down as I'm presenting too, to make sure that it's catching what I'm saying.
Yes, yes.
So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which is going to have our PowerPoint today. And most of our discussion today will actually be live demos. So we won't do a whole lot with the PowerPoint today, but the handout follows this PowerPoint, and it does give you step-by-step with visual like screen caps and pictures of what we're going to cover. So I do want to start that here.
Okay, I'll also go ahead and put the link in the chat, and the link will have the handout. So if anybody wants that during class, they can just click on that link.
Yeah, and then you can have the handout. You can also ask us to print the handout for you, and we can print a physical hard copy of it, and you could pick that up curbside or come on into the library and pick that up too, should you desire a printout copy. Okay. So today is Intro to Microsoft Word Part 1. We will actually have a 3-part series for Microsoft Word. Initially, we had a 2-part series for in-person, and we had a full 2 hours for each of those. We did pare it down a little bit, so it's more like an hour-and-a-half class today, because I know 2 hours of Zoom can be a little intense. So we've got about an hour-and-a-half's worth of material for today, and then next week and the week after. And today we're focused mostly on the navigation of what does Microsoft Word look like, how is it laid out, and then we'll get into a little bit about creating documents. And well, I'll go ahead and show you the agenda in just a second, which will get into that, more into that. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the different versions of Microsoft Word. There are a couple versions. There is the desktop version that's loaded, physically loaded onto your computer. And then there's also some online versions, and we'll talk about those and what's different about them. The terminology and descriptions includes some of the basic elements of Word and how to describe them using the language of Microsoft Word. So using the language that the program uses for what it calls things. Just like with any tech workshop, a lot of it is new vocabulary words. And I want you to know what the terms are according to the official technology language, as opposed to just saying the thingy over there, the thingy in the top corner. So we'll go over what the actual terms are. And we'll talk about tabs and groups, two of those terms. We'll go over how to create new documents, the difference between save and save as for documents, how to open existing documents. And then at the end, we'll spend some time with text and fonts and talking about how to change and manipulate your fonts and text. So we'll start to get just a little bit into formatting today. And then next week, we'll cover a lot more about formatting, your paragraphs, and a lot more over like copy and paste and moving text around. And then in the third workshop, we'll work with images and working with text and images together, and then inserting other things like shapes and symbols. So, okay, so we're going to go ahead. Any questions before we begin? And just like Rebecca said, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, you can ask them out loud, and feel free to do that at any point during the workshop. I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm always happy to stop and answer those, especially if you'd like something to be shown again, please feel free to put that in there. I'm happy to demo something a second time, especially in the online environment, because it's hard for me to know if you'd like to see it again unless you say something. So please feel free to say something in the chat or raise your hand and ask to have something demoed a second time if you need it. And we're very, very happy to do that. We're happy to answer all questions throughout. So don't feel like you're interrupting. You're not. It's what we want. Okay.
I don't see any questions so far, but I'll keep you updated.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So let's first talk about some different versions of Microsoft Word. So Microsoft Word is part of a bundle of services that Microsoft provides. And Microsoft 365 is kind of their term, their overarching umbrella term for this bundle that is available online. So it does require a Microsoft account, which would be, if you're familiar with Microsoft, Outlook is their email client, and you can get a free Outlook account. And when you get a free Outlook account, you also end up with access to some pared down versions of Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Publisher. So, and some other things. So the Microsoft 365 free version of Word requires a Microsoft account, which is the Outlook email that you can sign up for. It doesn't offer the full features of the paid 365 account. So there's even 365 has two different, they have a paid version and a not paid version. So you can get a free version of Word that's kind of pared down. You can also get the free version that's access to the apps or the online computing versions of it. If you took our cloud workshop, we talked about cloud computing and cloud storage. Cloud computing is what Microsoft Word Online is, okay? Then there's the paid version, which does depend on what you need. There are different paid plans. There's plans for home and plans for business use. And those would be, cost will reflect whether or not it's for a business or for home. And they do have access to more advanced functionality with those versions. And it does not need, the 365 paid version does not need internet access to get to it. So you can download it and run it on your computer like the desktop version. Okay. And then there's the Microsoft Office Home and Student, which is the desktop version, which means you basically can use it on your computer without having an active connection to the internet. So it's the ones that require internet access are considered cloud-based software. This is not cloud-based software. You can buy it. And the newest version will actually include Word 2019 and Excel 2019 and PowerPoint 2019. Older versions would be like 2016, which is what we're going to use today. back to 2013. And then if you have an older computer than that, you could even have some older versions of Microsoft products. And for the most part, they'll work in a similar way to what we're discussing today. You might just have to figure out how to get to the certain functions that we're looking at. Okay, but if anybody's interested, the handout does have the direct links to those different plans so that you can take a look at them and see which ones you might want. If you have a Mac computer, you can also get Microsoft products for the Mac and install them on your Mac or use them in the cloud environment. Okay, so it's not exclusive, or even with Chromebooks too, you can do it in the online version with Microsoft Word too. Okay, so they're not mutually exclusive. Okay. All right, any question? I should have put a question slide in there. Any questions about the different versions?
I don't see anything so far.
Okay. All right, so we're going to do terms, and then I'm going to do a live demo and point out where those things are. Okay, so a general term for Microsoft Word is it's basically an application for creating and working with text-based documents, things like resumes, term papers, cover letters, flyers, official documentation. Usually it's most often found in a professional setting, but you can also use it to, create your holiday card if you want, or, write letters to people. Okay, so it's basically the most important thing to take away from that is that it's a text-based application. Okay, and there are a couple of major parts to Microsoft Word and the layout. The ribbon is the area at the top of the screen where the commands are organized into tabs, icons, and groups. So this whole thing up here where it's blue, and then right below the blue bit where it's got these different groupings here, this is considered the ribbon. Okay, and this is true for Excel and PowerPoint and Publisher as well. They just are a different color. So for Excel, it's green. I think PowerPoint is kind of an orangish, like an orangish red color. But the ribbon is still that same part at the top of the screen. Okay. Okay. And then the tabs. So there are 8 tabs in addition to file. And then there's the Acrobat tab, which isn't the same as the other tabs. So when you see my red box around here, these are the ones that are most commonly used. Acrobat is specific to doing something with PDFs, which is a specific kind of document. So we'll cover that a little bit at the end of this description. But so there's 8 tabs, and you can see why they call them tabs, because they look a little bit like if you had a filing cabinet at home, and each of your hanging file folders has a tab placed across, so you can easily find what you're looking for. So that's why these are called tabs. And then icons, or what I call them task buttons too, are the graphic representations that correspond to different functions within Word. So if you hover over an icon, it should pop up with a little box underneath that will tell you what it does or what it is. So for example, paste here, the little clipboard that says paste, it already says paste underneath it. So it's going to be pasting a document or pasting text or pasting something from somewhere to somewhere else. But you might not know that this B stands for bold. And that's one thing we're going to work with today for changing our text. We're going to make our text bold. And when we do that, we'll come over here and we'll hit this B, and that's an icon or task button. Okay. Another part of the terminology description is groups. And groups are related task functions organized into groups. So the name of a group is usually below the task buttons or icons in that grouping. And additional tasks are accessible by clicking on the dialog box in the lower right-hand corner. So let's go over what that means. So here we have our icon for paste. And then if you see underneath that where it says clipboard, clipboard is the group. So if you see all these things, and you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see the faint line here that's between clipboard and font. So all of the things that are grouped here under clipboard will have to do with the clipboard. All of the things under font will have to do with controlling your font text, the size of it, and what you can do with it. So here is font. And you see there's a line here too, and then you get paragraph as another group. Okay, and that paragraph has to do with all the grouping of formatting of your paragraphs. Okay, so there are related task functions or task icons that will be in these groupings. Now, there's not a whole lot of space across this whole ribbon. So there's multiple things that you can do that may not be in your ribbon here that relate to that same function. So for that, this little down in the bottom right-hand corner here, if you're looking at clipboard, do you see the little arrow with the little square right here? This is known as the dialog box. And if I click on that, it's going to bring up a whole other pop-up window with a bunch of other functions that also relate to things you could do on the clipboard. Okay, or things that you could do with your font, or things that you could do with your paragraph and how it's formatted. Okay, and each one of these tabs is going to have a different set of these groups based on what it says or what it is. Now, home is probably is the group that the tab that we spend the most time on usually when we're in Microsoft Word. So it has the functions and groupings that we use most often, or at least according to Microsoft that they expect someone will use most often. Comes into that home menu. Okay. Talk a little bit more about these in just a second too with a live demo. But some of the other basic elements of what's positioned and shown on your screen. At the very top left is going to be what's known as the quick access toolbar. This is customizable. You can pick what goes up in here and change it. But on our version, if you look up here in the top of this first image, up here at the very top, the thing that looks like the save button, it looks kind of like a floppy disk icon, that is save. Then this would be edit undo, the arrow that points to the left. And then the middle one is redo, so like the circle thing. And then this little caret here that looks like a little down arrow with a little line above it, that is where you can get into all of the quick access settings, and you can pick other icons to add to your quick access settings. So if you know, for instance, that you're always ending up having to change, you're always going to want a default thing. For example, trying to think of a good one. Let's say you always want your margins to set your margins. That's the first thing you always want to do. You could put a quick access, an icon here in the quick access toolbar for your margins, so that you can just tap it once here and fix it, rather than having to go into the layout tab and then find the grouping for margins and then fixing it. Okay. The other thing that goes across the top of the ribbon is the document title. That's usually in the middle. The default is going to just be document 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many you've opened them, until you save it. Once you save it and give it a name, then this would change to whatever that name is. Okay. On the right-hand side at the top of your ribbon, you may be familiar with this if you've taken any of our other tech workshop classes where we've talked about how to manage windows when they pop up. The show or hide the ribbon. This is, I think, probably one of the most important icons to know on Microsoft Word, because if for some reason you accidentally remove your ribbon and all of this goes away and you can't see any of the tools anymore or any of the taskbar or the icons, it's probably that you've accidentally hidden your ribbon. So this one that looks like an arrow pointing upwards, that is the show or hide my ribbon. And I'll demonstrate this in just a moment too, but that's the show and hide my ribbon. The minimize, well, of course, minimize your document and put it down below for you to come back to later. Maximize will make it full screen, or restore down will make it a little bit smaller. And then most importantly, the X is to close out of the document. Okay, so these are some basic elements. We'll go over these in more detail in a live demo in just a second. We've got one more slide here in our basic elements category. So when you're looking at your live document, you're going to see along the left-hand side and the top that you can set rulers to show. And if you show the ruler, it's going to show you exactly, 1 inch and 1 inch increments across the left side and across the top. Okay. The document window is basically where the blank space is, where you're going to be typing on your sheet of paper. Your scroll bar is on the right-hand side. That allows you to navigate up and down throughout the document from page to page. In the bottom right-hand corner, you also have your zoom slider. This allows you to zoom in or out on the text in your document. And then we have different document views, which I'll go over each one of those in more detail in just a second, but there are different ways for you to view what you're typing. And then on the far left-hand side, the status bar and page count tells you how many pages you have. So this document, for example, had 1 page of 1 page. It will tell you how many words, so it gives you the word count. So if, for example, you knew you needed you were writing an article for the, or you're writing a letter, let's say you're writing a letter to the editor of the local paper, and they say your letter to the editor has to be 500 words or less, then you could check and see to make sure that you're under 500 words over there. And then you can also see, I'm gonna move this out of my way, that the proofing errors, we'll get into that in more detail. It's a little bit easier to explain with a live demo, but that's one way to see your spelling and go over your different possibilities of errors in your document. Okay, and I'm gonna stop there and show you these things, and then we'll cover tabs and groups in more detail. So I'm gonna stop here and switch to a live demo. If you have questions, feel free again to put them in the chat while we go through our live demo here. All right, we're going to share our document. Okay, so I'm hoping everyone can see our first document with Microsoft Word. We have not saved it yet. So right now it is still document 1, which you can probably see up there at the top, hopefully. Okay, now the ribbon again is this area here, starting at the top left corner of the blue, down through into the group, and going along over here into this other group and up and to the right. So pretty much everything that's up here is your ribbon. So when I ask to show or hide ribbon, which is again this arrow right here, if I hover over it, it should tell me. I might have to wait a second to tell me. Show or hide, no? Yep, so you see how it says auto hide ribbon, show tabs or show tabs and commands. If I hit hide the ribbon, see how it went away? Now I have had this done to me where I've come up to a computer and been like, oh my goodness, everything, my toolbars, everything just went away. What happened? It's okay. If that happens to you, come up here to the far right corner and tap where that arrow goes up in the box where it gives you the ribbon display options. And you can say show tabs and commands, and that'll bring everything back up. Now, if you hit this and you just say show tabs, you'll see, you can just see the tabs here. And then if I hit layout, it'll pop up there. So one of the ways they designed it so that it could save space for people is that they could put these away if they don't need them. I personally like to have tabs and commands all together so that everything is there and it doesn't keep collapsing. So, okay, oops, sorry, I meant to hit home. Okay, so the ribbon, again, that whole area here, tabs, again, we've talked about tabs across the side. So the file tab is a little different, and we'll spend a little more time talking about the file tab and why it's different in a few minutes. But we have home, insert, design, layout, references, mailing, review, and view. Now you'll notice up here, I don't have the Acrobat one that we saw in the slide. That's because I haven't installed that extra Acrobat thing, and it comes up when you're dealing with PDFs, okay? Which right now we're not dealing with PDFs, so we don't see that. Okay, the icons and taskbars again. So for example, paste, format. So here's that bold we were just talking about, and see if I hover over it, it'll tell me what it does. It's also going to give me a keyboard shortcut. So if you see in parentheses where it says Control+B, that is your keyboard shortcut to using bold. Okay, and some of these do have keyboard shortcuts as well. So if I do this, we've got text effects and typography. I come over here, align left, center. These are all things that you can do to help format your document and make it look more legible for someone, for example. But as long as you're hovering over these things, you can see what they are and possibly get a description of what it does. Okay, Now we mentioned the dialog box down here at the bottom for font. The dialog box would be on the right-hand side, this little down arrow, diagonal down arrow. If I click on that, I get even more options of what I can do with my font and the advanced ability to do character spacing. So I could change how close the letters are to each other, kerning, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I encourage you to play around with that when you have time, maybe even at the end today. Play around with using that, opening up those dialog boxes and seeing what else is in these groups. Okay. Again, we talked about our basic elements, our quick access toolbar up here in the far right corner. And you'll notice here, we've changed our quick access toolbar here. So that screenshot, we had save, undo, redo, and then nothing. But here we've customized this one so that it has a print preview window. Now, again, if I tap on this to customize, I can add different things and I can show more commands. So if there's something you find that you use all the time, and every time you use it, you have to go to the different tab, go into the different group, maybe even into the dialog box to find it, you might consider just popping it up here into the quick access toolbar. Okay, all righty. And then minimizing, if I do this, I don't know if you'll be able to see this when I do it. Nope. What I've done is basically just moved it so that it's down at the bottom of my screen. But it's paused for you because I've basically taken it off the screen. So let me bring it back up here. I got it. Okay, I think I might have to stop share and then reshare it. 1 second. Okay, so that was, if I minimize it, it goes down below into my taskbar. And then of course I can hit this here to restore down or make it full screen. And then to X out, the little X in the far right corner. Okay, any questions about all that so far? Before I talk about the basic elements here?
I don't see any so far, but I will let you know.
Okay, we're going to continue our tour here, and we're going to look at our document where we have our ruler. So along the left-hand side, you'll see there's a ruler there, and up at the top, you'll see there's a ruler there. You can also see that it's a little bit of it is grayed out. The grayed out part is basically telling me how far in I have for an indentation for when I start typing. So if I start typing, you can see that it begins to type right here because this grayed out part here is my margin. So my margin, my left margin is set for 1 inch, and my top margin over here is set for 1 inch. So when I start to type, my document is going to start typing 1 inch in from the left and 1 inch down from the top. Okay, then when I try to type all the way over, you should notice once I get to that point, it will switch to a new line. And then I can keep going and switching. If I left it like this, it's not, see how it gets right up to the edge. I can go right to the edge and then it'll switch. That's because my right margin is also set for 1 inch. Okay, and you can change the margins. We'll talk about that, I think, next week or 2 weeks from now about switching margins and how it affects where things are placed. But today, I just want you to recognize that there are rulers. You can take those away so that you don't see them if you go to the View tab. So this should make sense because view means I'm viewing it. So if I want to see it, I can check mark the box up here under Show for ruler, and that'll show my rulers. If I uncheck that, those rulers will go away. Okay, so if you don't want the rulers, you don't have to have them. I find it particularly helpful to have them because then I know how far in my margins go and what I'm doing. You could also do grid lines if you wanted. I don't particularly like grid lines or use them very often myself, but you can do a grid, and you can also add a navigation pane, which is going to, as you go through your document, it'll tell you like where your table of contents page is, if you're writing like a big paper or something, or maybe a manuscript for a book. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take that away. We're going to leave the rulers on though. Okay, we'll go back to home. So the other thing I want to show you, the scroll bar off on the right hand side, to scroll between your pages in your document, you can use the scroll bar, just like you can use the scroll bar on a website to go further down on the website. You can jump to particular pages if you want. Down here on the left-hand side, I gotta move my thing here 1 second. Okay. On the left-hand side, we talked about our page number. So right now our page is 1 of 1. If I scroll down enough that I get a second page and a third page and I type something here, now you're going to see that this has changed down here in the bottom left-hand corner. It now says page 3 of 3. If I go here, now I'm on page 2 of 3, just to give you an idea of how many pages you have. And we can see our word count. We have 8 words. It's actually counting this as a word. I don't count that as a word, but it counts it as a word. Okay. I will come back up here. And so now we have 7 words. Okay. And the does count as a word, of course. So it's not counting characters, but it's counting the words. Okay. And then here would be our proofing errors. So if I made a mistake like that, then I went down to proofing. It's going to say word found a proofing error now. So if I tap on that, it's going to tell me what it is. Okay. And it's because I spelled mistake wrong. Okay. All righty. Any questions so far?
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute my microphone. There are no questions so
Okay.
far.
Good. I'm glad you were able to.
Yeah, I like
to work
clicked it
finally.
twice and it wasn't going. Finally got it.
Okay, good. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner, I mentioned that I'm going to go ahead and close out of the spelling stuff. But down here in the bottom right-hand corner, we also have the different views, the read mode, if everybody sees that. So it takes away all the extra things at the top. So it makes it like a cleaner, more simple view so that you could read your document. And then we have the outline view, or sorry, print layout, which looks like this, which is the one I usually use because I have my ribbon and I have my rulers and can see everything. And then the web layout, which looks like this. Okay, so those are 3 different layouts that you can play around with and figure out which one you like to use best. Then down at the very bottom, well, not the very bottom, next to the modes for reading, we also have the zoom, what we call the zoom slider. And if you notice, there's a minus and a plus, and we're down here in the very far bottom right corner. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a zoom out and a zoom in, and then there's a bar in the middle. And if I hold down my mouse on the little slider bar, I can zoom in closer to the actual text or further away from the actual text. Okay, I usually like it, and 100% is right in the middle for optimized for your screen. So I like going in just when I'm doing these as webinars, especially, I like to go in a little bit more so people can see what I'm doing with the cursor a little bit closer. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. So we're at about 175%, 180. We're at 180%. And if you see, if I did that much, my scroll bar, I have a scroll bar on the right. And now I also have a scroll bar down below so that I can scroll over all the way on my page. And that might be true for you too. With your home document, you might have your screen, your monitor might not be large enough. So you might have to use a scroll bar down there too. Okay. Any questions about kind of the basic layout of Word?
I don't see anything so far.
Okay, we're going to go over some of the tabs up here at the top quickly, and then we'll cover some information about, we'll start to get into what I like to call is like the meat and potatoes, which would be actually doing something to the text that you've put in there. Okay, so the Home tab includes the groups for clipboard, font, and paragraph, and then styles. And primarily, I say the ones that I use most often on this is the clipboard to copy and paste things or cut things, and then font, which we'll use today, which will be to change how your text looks, and then paragraph, which is changing how the paragraph looks. So if you're going to indent stuff, if you're going to add a list, all of that kind of stuff. Styles I don't use very often myself, but styles can be helpful if you really want something to have a certain look to it. You can, as you see, if I'm hovering, as I'm hovering over it, it's changing things, making them different, changing the colors, changing the font. That's what the styles do. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So most of what you see on the home tab is stuff that you use quite regularly. I'm going to go ahead and undo my desire to have formatting. Okay, wait, now I got to redo that because I still want it to look like that. Okay, so if you notice, I just used the undo and redo from up here in the top quick access toolbar. Okay. And then also it has the editing group over here where we'll talk about these things week 3 about finding certain words or texts that you can find within your document. And then, you know, if you've misspelled a word repeatedly, you can find it, replace it with the correct spelling. So we'll talk about that more in 2 weeks. Okay, the insert tab, most of what's going to be here is going to be if you want to insert stuff into your document. And we are going to spend some time with this in that 3rd week as well. But some of the things you might insert, pages, you know, if you realize you need a page in between your document, you would insert a blank page or a cover page. You could insert a table. You could even import a table from Microsoft Excel if you've got one where you need to show some data. You could insert pictures, shapes, charts, screenshots, pretty much any, you can pretty much insert anything, but this would be some of the primary things you might insert. You could insert a Wikipedia article link or quote, online video, hyperlinks. Often people will include hyperlinks so that way someone can take from your document and go out to this reference source on the internet. Comments would be if someone's checking the document for you, they would insert comments. You can insert a header or a footer and a page number. I find page numbers particularly helpful if you've got a large handout like we do for these classes, because even if you don't get to staple them and you drop it, you know, knowing how the order is kind of important. Text box and different things with text like a signature, the date and time, you can put all of that stuff in there too. And then over here we have special symbols and equations. We'll talk about those on the 3rd week as well. Okay. The design tab lets you get a little bit more into themes, which means you can change, you know, again, it's a little bit like styles in that you can change the font and it all works together, and it's basically like creating a template for you. So if you picked one of the, you know, if I picked this one and I actually had a title, it would put an underline in there. You can change colors and you can change the fonts, and then you can change how things are look. You can add a watermark. So we won't spend a whole lot of time on the design layout on the design tab specifically, but please know that it's there and you can use it to make your document look interesting in various ways. Okay, layout gives you the margin. Again, we talked about margins and them being 1 inch. You can change them here. You can also change your paper orientation. So if it's portrait or landscape, if everybody saw that with me, I don't know if everybody has the video on, but portrait would be up and down. Landscape would be left to right. You could add columns. You can change the size of your paper. So if you were, say you had to print on legal size paper, that's 8.5 by 14. So you could switch this to 8.5 by 14. If I do that, you'll notice, let me zoom out a little bit here, and you'll notice if I switch to 8.5 by 14, you should now see my ruler will go all the way up. Oops, let me do this way. So if I do my size, let's do 11 by 17. So if you notice 11 by 17, the ruler has now changed and it should go all the way up to 17 over here. Okay, we're going to go back to 8.5 by 11 for our standard size. But if you had different size paper, this would also be true if you were, say, printing something on envelopes, like holiday cards again, or doing a mass mailing. You can set it for whatever envelope size you need. Let's go back to 8.5 by 11, which I think is A4. Nope, sorry. I want 8.5 by 11. Where's my 8.5 by 11? There it is. Okay. So, and then I'm going to zoom back in here a little bit. So give me just a second. I'm going to zoom back in so we can see it a little better. To about 175 or so. Whoops, that was way too much. Okay, about 170. Okay, so that's a little bit about the layout. Layout, you can also control the indent. We talked about how this is going to start. If I use the tab key and indent, and you see the little marker up here and how far that moved, this is an indent. So if I was starting a new paragraph, usually you indent a new paragraph. So you would go in this far. I could change how the indent looks right here under the indent. I can't highlight that, but if you look at the paragraph grouping here where my mouse is, there's indent and there's spacing, and you can do that. Excuse me. You can also arrange things. You can send something backward, bring it forward. That deals more with when you've got images and other pieces put in there. References is where you can check your spelling. References is where you can do inserting like a citation or a footnote or an endnote. And you can do a table of contents page. You can insert tables or figures. So things that you might do if you're writing, say, a research paper, a lot of it would be in the references category. Mailings, again, talked about envelopes. If you were doing a mass mailing to people, telling them about your new business, you might use the mailings to make sure you do labels that then you can print with all the addresses on them. Review is the one that I use most often, which is spelling and grammar and the thesaurus in case you want to change your word choice, and then getting your word count here. Okay. You can also translate different languages. It works okay. And then you can track if someone else has looked at the document and put in changes or added comments. This is where you can see all of that stuff with the tracking and changes. Okay, so I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of those things. View tab, again, you have the read mode, print layout, web layout, you can show the ruler, the grid lines. You can zoom in or out. Now we can also do that down here, of course, with the slider bar, but if you wanted to zoom and see multiple pages at the same time, you could do, multiple pages, page width, you can do 100%, shortcut to get there. And then you can play with the different windows and switch back and forth. So if you had two documents open at the same time, you could switch back and forth between the two documents. So that's a basic layout, essentially, of how Microsoft Word is laid out and how things kind of function. Are there any questions about that or questions about a specific tab?
So someone asked about watermarks. It's not really something that we are going into, but I wanted to sort of describe it out loud. A watermark is something that you can add to a document, usually like maybe you're making an original copy of something and you want to distribute it to people, but you want to make sure that it's not going to be reproduced in the original way. You can add a watermark to it. A lot of artists will add watermarks to their pictures, paintings, photographs, so that it's sort of under their ownership. Of course, you'll notice watermarks in money if you hold it up to the light. That's just sort of a way to designate it as like an original object and it can't be reproduced.
Yeah. Or in the case of a document, if you're printing a document in Microsoft Word, you want everyone to know that it's a draft version of something, like say it's a draft version of a policy. Yes. You might put a watermark on it that says draft across it. So it's very clear to everyone that this is not the final version of something too.
Yes,
I've definitely seen people do that.
Someone also asked about inserting. I know we're going to cover that, I think, next week.
Yes,
but they were asking
next week and the week after, actually. We'll cover it both, but.
Yeah, but they were basically asking if when you insert something, you can format it, change the shape, size, etc.
Absolutely.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, and I can even do that right now, where if I was going to add, say, a shape, for example, I can just go up to shapes, pick a shape, go like this, pop it in there. Now I have this shape, but I can format the shape and do things with it. So, and you'll notice when I add it, there's another tab that pops up here that says drawing tools and format. And this is when you can format anything that you've inserted. So I could change the shape fill and make it white. or black. I could do the outline in like a red color. I could put a shadow on it. And you can do all that kind of stuff too. Yeah. So you can format everything once you've placed a new thing. We call them basically an object. So once you place a smart object or an object into your document, then you can edit and format it. And we will spend time with that in the future class too, where we'll spend time formatting the shapes and the things that we insert. Yeah, great questions.
That's all we had so far. But of course, if anybody has any more questions, feel free to pop those into the chat or raise your hand.
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, so there's one tab that I didn't really cover yet, and that's File. And that's because File is a little bit different. When I click on File, you'll notice instead of having groupings of tools across the top, it's got navigation along the left-hand side of things that you could do. And right now, the info up at the top, info section tells me the properties of my document that I just created. So it's not going to tell me the size because I haven't saved it yet. It is saying it's 1 page. It's got 11 words. I've been using it for it's been open for about 60 minutes when it was created. And then that it's created by me or the librarian, which is what this computer is logged in as. Okay. If I wanted to protect my document, that's where I could put a password protect my document. So that, and I could make it so that people can either change it or not change it if I share it with them. And, you know, the other things here, inspecting it or managing it, meaning if like I accidentally kicked my, the cord on my computer and the computer shut down, it might give me a recovered version of the document where it's trying to recall what I had done. And that would be here in the manage document. Okay. The other thing here, File, New. If I want to create a new document, I can just hit New, and then it's going to give me the option to create a blank document or something from a template. And this is going to come in handy when you first open Word and try to do something. You can search here for sample templates for whatever kind of document you're trying to create, or you can just create it from scratch using that blank document. Okay, and this is pulling both from the Microsoft Online store where you can download templates and also what's already preloaded on this particular version of it. Okay, I can open a recent document if I have something recent over here. I can go to OneDrive, which would be cloud, so your cloud service, or I can go and find something in this PC, or I can browse for a document that I've created. I can also save this document we just created. So if I want to save it, they're going to recommend using Save As the first time we save something. And we're going to cover this in just a moment too when we create a new document. So we're creating this, we're going to Save As, we'll go to Browse, and then I'm going to save it directly onto my desktop because that way it's easier to find for the purposes of our demonstration. So I'm going to say, let's call this February 8th test document. Okay, then I'm going to save it. Okay, so now you'll notice up here at the top, oops, sorry. Hopefully you'll notice up here at the top that the title changed and now it says February 8th test document. That means I've saved it. I've given it that name, that title. Okay, so that's one way you can create a document, is going to File, New, and then selecting either a blank document or a template. Okay, and that's creating a document. Any questions about creating a new document?
I don't see anything so far.
Okay, let's go ahead and let's open a template. Let's do maybe education. Sure. Okay, student report. Why not? And we're going to create it. So we've created this student report. It's got a nice picture and then some headings. Now, when I want to save this one, I can again use Save As because it's a new document. I do want to spend just a little time on the difference between save and save as, because I know that does come up quite often for people. Save and save as. So save as is what I usually recommend people use the first time they save a document for sure, because it gives you the opportunity to tell it where to go and where you want it to live. After that, it's okay if you use save on the same document if you want. If you want to be able to track your changes as you go along, you can save as is great for basically being able to name a document. And if you make changes, you do save as, you make a second copy with whatever changes you've made. So saving additional changes to the same document, you can do with the save button. But if you want to keep track of what you've done and what you've changed, so you have a rough draft and a final draft, you can do save as and give it the first name and the second name. It's a little bit like if you went up to the copy machine and you were making copies and you were like, okay, I'm going to copy this document just like it is going to be save. Okay. Then you make, let's say you handwrite some changes onto that piece of paper that you copied. Then you're going to put that one on the copy machine, and that's going to be save as a new version. Okay. Does that make sense for everybody? The difference between save and save as. So if you're using save, basically you're writing over the existing document. You're saying, I'm making changes, but I only want one file that includes all these changes. And save as is, I'm making changes and I want a new file. So I'm going to have, version 1, version 2, version 3. Okay.
And it also helps to be saving. Usually if you're writing out like a paper or doing a lot of work in Word, I recommend saving often.
Yes.
Just as you're working, just hit that save button, because I know in the past I've been working on stuff and, something may happen to your computer, like for some reason, maybe the battery's low and you're not sure, and it just shuts off, or
hey, the power could go out where you are, or
right.
Anything can happen.
Really. And it helps you in the future, like your future self will thank you for saving those files, because it's really hard to kind of get that stuff back, especially if you're spewing out information from your brain. I know for me, it's hard to retype that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I like to say save and save often. So when I'm typing something, every time I've made changes, I will, every 4 or 5 minutes, I will go in save and make sure that I'm at least hitting the save button up here in the top left corner, because it is important. And that is with the desktop version. The online version of Word works differently. The online version saves whenever you make a change. So for Microsoft 365 Word Online, it saves and you don't have to do the saving. But if it's the desktop version like this, you absolutely want to remember to save things. Okay, so I just make it a habit to go up here and hit that save button every couple of minutes, so that I don't lose my work. It only takes writing a 30-page honors thesis before you go, this is really important and I better make sure I save it a lot. Or, if you've worked really hard on something, you don't want to lose it. It's good to just make sure you save it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll just save this one as an example. So save as, I'm going to browse and I'm going to call this student report. And I'm going to save this and see how this right now says this PC documents. Well, I really want it on the desktop. So I'm going to click right here. Hoping you can see that, and say desktop instead. Save it. Oops, save. And now I'm going to go ahead and make some changes. So let's go ahead. I actually have a title for my report. Ocean, let's call it the Atlantic Ocean Report. Okay, now let's say I want to save it this way. I'm going to go to File, and instead of hitting Save As,
Susan, it's like not showing. I don't know if you maybe need to.
Oops. Okay. Let me.
I see the Word document, just not the menus you're going through.
Share screen again. Let me go to my student report and share that. Okay. I'm hoping everyone now can see the template I created.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. So the template I created, I went in and found a template, and then I opened it and I'm calling it student report. So it's a student report up here. Now I've changed it and I've given it a title and called it Atlantic Ocean Report. Now I'm going to save, and I can either do save, which is going to save over the top of my student report. So I'll hit save. And now if I reopen student report, it's going to say Atlantic Ocean Report. Okay, so that's the difference. So I can just keep saving it using that little save icon in the top left corner. Let's say I've made a bunch of changes and I want to save it as a new version. If I want to save this as a new version, I'm going to go to File, Save As. I can put it still on the desktop. Now you'll notice it comes up, it's going to be student report. So if I say yes, This is going to save over the top of student report. But I don't want that. I want it to be a separate document. So student report 2, and then save it. Okay, now it's student report 2. So then I have 2 versions. I have student report and student report 2. Okay, I'm hoping that helps everyone for knowing the difference between the 2. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing that. And I'm gonna actually close out of those behind the scenes here for a second, so then I can show you how to open recently returned stuff. Okay.
I should throw in there too, when I'm doing the save as, I think it's helpful also to use when you don't want to like create a whole new document if you're using a lot of the same information. So like, for example, if you're maybe like making a budget for something and you had one from last year and you want to create a new one. So I'll usually go in and do save as, name it like 2022, and then I'll go ahead and change all the info. So that way I still have my last year, but then I'm not like, you know, reinventing the wheel. I can just kind of update the data figures or whatever.
Yes.
So that's kind of nice in that instance.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, we do that here. I mean, I do that here at work. I have a monthly report each month. So I basically copy and paste the monthly report, and then I go in and save the new version. So it can be January 2022. And then next month, when I go in and make my February 2022 report, I'll take the January report, and then I will save a new version of that so that all of the fields and stuff, like where I have to report how many people attended stuff, and all that kind of stuff is all the same. I don't have to retype all of that out. I just can put in my new information and then save it. So yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you, Rebecca, for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. There's a million different types of things you can talk about when it comes to save as.
Absolutely. And everybody works in a different way, but you know, that's one thing where I'm like, I'm going to save the time of having to retype this template out every time.
Yeah, it's a big time saver.
Yeah. So I want to talk quickly about how to open existing documents or documents that you've already created. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to just go ahead and give me 1 second. I'm just going to open Microsoft Word. So I'm opening Word with a, let's see. I'm going to see if you guys can see this. I'm hoping you can. So here I've opened Microsoft Word, and here are, this is one way to do it. If you have this turned on at home, where it says you've opened recent documents, and sometimes your documents will appear here that you've recently worked with. We don't have it turned on here on this computer, but I want you to know that it exists and that you can do this way. The other way you can do it is, of course, you can go into, I could go into a blank document and then go up to File and come down to Open, and then Browse and open my sample document, or on my desktop, my student report. I'm going to open February 8 test document. So once you go into Word, you can do File, Open, and find those files. The other way you can do it is just by clicking, and I'm going to stop sharing that for a second. Let me see if I can screen share this. It's just by clicking on the document wherever it is on your desktop screen. I don't think I can share the desktop view. I probably can't, but wherever you see that icon, you can double click on it. So for example, let me go back to Browse here, like February 8th here. If I double click on this, that'll automatically open it. And then I can
closed out for some reason.
Yeah. So when I opened it, it closed out of the screen share. That was a Zoom thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I figured it probably was, but that was kind of weird.
But whenever you double click on the icon for something, you tap, then it should open that document. And those are 2 ways to open existing documents. Okay. Now we are ready to talk about text. I'm always excited about text. I'm a kind of a font nerd. So this is a fun thing.
I love fonts. I should also throw that out there.
Yes, we are both font nerds.
I used to download fonts from font websites. That's how much I like fonts.
Same. I do digital scrapbooking, which means I download and collect fonts.
Yes. It's funny because
and do font pairings and everything.
Yes, I used to work for my university, and they would have like special fonts families that they would buy, and I was just like, ooh, they were so nice. But they get expensive if you buy some of the more popular ones.
especially with commercial licensing, which you would need for something like a university.
Yeah, I never would do that. I just get the free ones.
Yeah, my scrapbooking stuff at home, because it's just for personal use, I do a lot of the free ones. But if we were doing it for work purposes, we would pay for a license for something, for a font. Anyway, it's a little beyond the scope of today. But if you are interested, any of you who are interested in learning more about fonts and font pairings and stuff, let us know in the chat, and we'll include some follow-up resources in the email. We can tell you all about, serif and sans serif and all that stuff, and geek out on it for a while, because it's very fun.
I'm always happy to geek out about that kind of stuff.
Yes, same. Okay, so we're gonna cover. Oh, first I should say, are there any questions about what we've gone over so far?
I haven't seen any so far.
Opening documents and saving. Okay. All right.
I'll let you know if anything pops up, though.
Now we'll get into the fun stuff. I am going to take just a moment and go back to my PowerPoint so you can see something a little bit better. So I'm going to stop sharing that and jump into the PowerPoint. Just bear with me for just a second. I'm just going to zoom ahead here over all of our tabs and opening and things so that I can bring up the first of the text fun things. Okay. So when you want to change any of your text, if you've already typed something out, the way to change it is going to be to highlight the text that you want to modify and change. If you're not familiar with highlighting can be kind of a stressful and very particular process. So I recommend practicing highlighting. Essentially, what you need to do for highlighting something is you'll put your cursor at the beginning of what you want to highlight, or at the end of what you want to highlight, and then either go forward or backward and with your cursor so that you cover all of the text that you want to highlight. Okay, it can be complicated and it's very specific. Once you've highlighted your text, then you can do whatever you want to change it. There's also, if it's one word that you want to change, you can double click on that word and it'll highlight just that word. So that is kind of a shortcut if you only need to highlight one word. So I'm going to demonstrate that now here. Let me stop sharing that. Sorry, we're going to jump back and forth here for just a second, because I know highlighting can be one of those things that takes a lot of effort. So this is and I'm going to zoom in even more so you can see this a little better even. Now I'm going to go rock it up to 200%. Okay. So let's say I want to change the second sentence here, that this is a mistake, and I want to do something different to it. To highlight, I'm going to take my cursor. Can everybody see that my cursor is on the left side of the T?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down my left mouse button, excuse me, and drag across. Just for a second here. Okay, once I've done that, see how it's all highlighted in gray? This means it's been selected, it's been highlighted. Now I can do something to it and change it in some way. So if I want to come up here and make it bold, I can pick bold and just tap on it. And now you can see the difference between regular and bold. I could italicize it and underline it. So now this is bold, italics, and underline. And a lot of times when you use that, of course, is for some sort of emphasis in your document. Or perhaps if you're doing something with a specific citation style in a bibliography, where you're supposed to underline the title, you're supposed to italicize the, I'm trying to remember what I've italicized with the different styles. Well, either way, if it's like Chicago Manual of Style or MLA or, the Psychological Association, the APA, there's certain constructs of how you do things to make it legible. And oftentimes it includes underlining something. Okay. To take that off, I can click on each one of these. If you see how they're highlighted up here, the B, the I, and the U. To remove them, I can just click on them again. Or if I want to erase all the formatting that I've already done, there's a little eraser up here where it says clear all formatting. If everybody sees that, it's at the top. It's in the Home tab, the font group. At the top on the right-hand side is a little A with a little eraser next to it. If I click that, it'll clear all the formatting. Okay. So that can help if you've done something that you didn't mean to do. You can take it off. Okay. So I'm going to spend just a moment talking about all the different things that are up here in this. And I think it might be easier to do the PowerPoint slideshow where that actually is here. Okay, so I'm hoping, give me just a second. Oops. Gotta go back here. Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna share my screen here that has my PowerPoint. Okay, and we're gonna change. I want you to see this slide. Okay, this allows us to get a little bit up close to that image there of what the group looks like. Okay, so your font style is your text, but it's really your font. It's the shape of the different letters. How far apart are they? How big are they in their natural state? That's going to be known as your font. So the font style is what you can change here. And so Calibri would be the font. And if I hit this down arrow, I could then get more options of fonts and change it. Your size, font size or text size, is going to be, right now it's 11. If I hit this down arrow, I can change it to make it larger or smaller. Changing case allows me to make everything capital letters or everything lowercase. And then here's your eraser that allows you to clear all of the formatting. And then down below here, this little section where there's the blue A outline, and then the AB with the yellow bar underneath and the A with the black bar underneath. These are all things that control word art and highlighting. So if you wanted to highlight the background around your text, that would be this one here. And if you want to highlight, we'll play with these all in just a moment too. And then you also have your text styles, which would be bold, italic, and underline. This is cross through, and this is a subscript and a superscript. Okay, so you can put that on anything. Okay. So I wanted to show it a little bit closer so everybody could see it. So now I will go ahead and share. Let's see if it switches. Did it switch? Yes, it switched. Okay. That's a little less obtrusive than switching back and forth so anyway, we're good. So let's move on. Okay. Are there any questions about the grouping for font that we saw?
I don't see anything.
Okay, so let's go ahead and we're just going to play around and we're going to have some fun. So here's where I'm looking for people to put some stuff in the chat about how we're going to change our text. So this is going to be the interactive portion today. So I'm going to ask you what font we should use for our text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and highlight our text. And then I'm going to say, what font should we use? And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to hit this arrow. Now you're going to see there's a whole bunch of fonts. So I'm going to say, okay, first person in the chat, go ahead and pick a letter, any letter A to Z, and just throw it in there. And we'll pick a font from whatever you pick. Okay. So anybody just throw it in the chat. Just pick A, C, Z, whatever color, whatever one you want. Okay.
I don't see anything yet.
Okay, Rebecca, pick a letter.
How about H?
H. Okay, so now we're going to look at what we have for H. So this is a fun one. Hattenspieler looks very German.
It's like German, yes.
Or Germanic. Harlow solid italic, Harrington, Hightower text, or HoloLens. And then we get to pick one. So which one do you like? And again, this is
I kind of like the Hightower text that looks like a fancy book
put,
or something.
We'll put Hightower text in there then. Okay. And remember, font choice, people have written books on font choices and what are correct font choices for certain things. So, keep in mind, if you're working on like a professional resume or something, usually it's going to be Arial, Times New Roman, or Calibri, because those are the kind of the 3 default Microsoft Word fonts. If it's going to be something, if it's something in a professional way, probably that. If it's a flyer, you can get a little bit more inventive, but just know that different fonts suit different purposes. Okay, so now we have changed our font. Now let's go ahead and change the size of our font. But we're just going to do that for this first sentence. So how big should we make our first sentence? Up here right now, I'm looking at Hightower. So we are at the top here where it says Hightower and 10.5. So I'm gonna hit this little arrow, and now we can make it as big as we want. I mean, it can take up more than 1 page even, and wrap it around or whatever. So somebody pick a number that you can see on the screen. And you can put it in the chat.
I don't see anything yet.
Okay, Rebecca, pick a number.
Let's go with 22.
Okay, I'm going to make this 22 point font. And that's what we say, either the size of 22 or 22 point. So 22 point font. Okay, so now if I zoom out a little bit, you'll be able to see that you can see how much bigger our first sentence is than our second sentence. If I tap anywhere on this first sentence, note, we still have Hightower and 22. If I tap on my second sentence over here with the cursor and select it, we have Hightower 10.5. Okay, so if you're ever curious what font you're using or what size it is, all you have to do is tap in the middle of one of the words in that sentence and it'll tell you. Now let's go ahead and make document different. So let's pick a different text. Let's pick a different font for it. So Rebecca, go ahead and pick another letter.
Let's go with S. There's probably a million in S.
So I'm going to scroll through this list, and because I want to scroll kind of fast, I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down here. I also want to call out real quick the fonts we used recently. Note that it says recently used fonts, Hightower, Arial, and Times New Roman. Okay, so we do know that at least for what we've used recently, it'll stay near the top. But let's go ahead and head down to our S. Our S is here. Okay, so does anything, what about stencil? I like stencil. Okay, we're gonna pick stencil. So now we've made stencil. Okay, now we can change the size of this too. Let's change the size of this one. Let's make it like 14, so it's a little more obvious. Okay, so now if I was really curious and I'm looking around this, and note, this says Calibri because now we're back to our next sentence down here, which right now this sentence is gonna be Calibri because Calibri is the default. Okay, because we've messed with one sentence up here and we haven't done anything to the rest of the document yet. Okay, but now if I click here, Hightower, I click here, changes to stencil. Okay, click over here, changes to 10.5, click here, 14. Okay, so that's doing the basic changing of your font size and font.
We do have a question.
Yes.
Someone is asking, how do I change and save the font default for every time I open a new document?
So the default that Microsoft Word picks is either Times New Roman or Calibri. If it's 2016, it's going to be Calibri, and that is going to be the default that Microsoft has picked for you. I do think you can customize it and change the default. But that is a great question that we can look up and put into the follow-up email to be sure, because I don't know if you can actually change it, but I think you can, because I think that is a customization that you can have. Yeah, set as default. There it is. It's right there. Okay, does everybody see that? So I went into the dialog box. So here I'm in the font group, down here at the corner where the little arrow is, like that, and then it brings up font. And if you see down here where it says set as default at the bottom, this is what you could use to set it as a default as something else. So if I wanted Arial to be my default, set it as a default, I can say this document only or all documents. I'm going to say this document only and say okay. So then when I come down here, now it's going to be Arial wherever I type. If I go back, so mistake. And let's say I pick, for the default, I'll pick Calibri instead. Let me jump down here. So you have a certain amount or certain choices, what you can pick for it. We'll go to Calibri and say set as default. We'll say okay. And now it's going to be when I start typing down here, oops, it should be, I don't know if that's saved. Anyway, it should be Calibri. Yeah, so now it's Hightower. Let's go back up to Calibri. So that's how
you can also type in that box there and it should kind of jump you to the list too.
Yes, you can also search for the font up here by starting to type. Like if I was to start typing S, like we were going to go to the ones, or if I knew, for example, I wanted Times New Roman, I could start typing in there, just like Rebecca is saying. So let's go with Calibri regular, and then you can set, to 12 and say okay. And now this is going to be Calibri instead. Okay, so that's how you can change your default.
And I'll make sure to put that in the email that we send out.
Yeah, so basically you just have to go into the dialog box and then hit set as default. Great question. Okay, so we've highlighted some text, we've modified the size, we've modified and changed the font. We've also done bold and underline and italics. The next thing we can do is we can change the color and we can add a highlight to the background. So I'm going to go ahead and pick, this is a document with some typing. Again, I'm highlighting the whole sentence. Now it's your choice if you do the punctuation as well. I usually tend to do the punctuation, especially if I'm changing the color, because it'll look a little weird if I change the color to like red and then there's still a black period at the end. So I usually include my punctuation at the end. Okay, so I've highlighted it, and now I'm going to come up here and we're going to use our highlight functions here. To highlight, I can make it yellow. Ooh, and then it's like a highlighter for a regular book, or, and I can make it blue or whatever. And again, this is just, this is trying to call attention to something. Generally, the intent is to make it more legible. So I probably would not pick dark blue with black text like that, because that's a little hard to read. So I'm just going to go ahead with standard yellow. Okay. Now, if I want to change the actual color from black to something else, I can do that too. So for this is a mistake, I can change it from black to red, like, oh, this is a mistake, or hey, attention, because red is one of those colors that is supposed to draw people's attention quickly. Okay. Now, if I don't like that and I'm like, oops, I didn't mean to do it, you can either use the undo up at the top. So you're going to undo that, or we can use that eraser. So I can put this back and I'll put this. Now that's going to change the formatting. It won't change all of it. So if I do this and then I highlight it and I say erase, note that it does not take away the highlighting, because the highlighting is not considered a formatting choice. It is, so it's going to leave that highlight there, but it will change the other things that we did. So if I want to go back here and make this, what had we picked? Stencil for something like that.
Yes,
anyway,
it was stencil.
And then I made this red, so I'll make this red. Okay. Any questions about that? About changing the formatting and using the highlights and the font color?
I don't see anything so far.
Okay. So the other thing that's kind of fun is this this text effect. So this is called text effects, excuse me. The A was the opening. Sorry, not the opening. The A with the blue border. And you can do some cool things with your text. So let's go ahead and make this a lot bigger so it's more obvious. I'm going to bump this up to like 36. Okay. Now it just looks ominous with the highlight and the red. We have created something that's gonna catch someone's eye.
Yes, it looks like almost like police tape or something.
Yes, it's like, it is caution tape basically. Yeah, that's what's in caution tape, and the stencil is almost the right font for caution tape too.
Yes.
So we've done something cool without realizing it, that we're going to definitely have somebody draw. It's going to draw someone's attention to this
yes.
this document. So something else we can do. I'll use this as a mistake here. And we can do our text effects here. So we can give it a shadow. Let's do like a shadow like that. So as everybody see, there's now a little shadow behind it. I don't know how easy that's showing up on Zoom. Let me make it a little bit even bigger text-wise. Let's go up to 72. Okay, that's a little easier to see now, I think. Can everybody see
That's
that
like a
there's
drop shadow.
there's like a little drop shadow behind it? Yeah. So that's a text effect that we can create. And again, oops, I did not mean to highlight that. So if you didn't mean to highlight it, you can say no color. And then, but again, I have to highlight it first and then say, oops, didn't mean to do it. And then you can say no color. That'll take it off. Okay, so if I wanted to do something like glow, I can make it glow. So that basically just kind of adds a bigger border around it. So, okay. Now, legibility wise, this probably isn't that great, what we've done with the text here, but you get an idea of how to make it happen. Are there any questions about this?
I don't see anything so far.
Okay, so if anybody wants homework, the homework is going to be to basically open up Microsoft Word, go ahead and type something out, play around with the different things you can do in the font group with it. And then next week we'll spend some time with paragraph and the insert tab, and we'll do some other fun stuff. But that's everything that I have for today. I do want to point out, let me stop share here. And please let us know if you'd like me to demo something again, or if you have questions you'd like answered today. They don't necessarily have to be specific to the part of Word we covered today, but you can ask other questions about Microsoft Word if you'd like. And I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here and from the current slide. So we've covered the font, and the handout will go through step by step how to select each thing, how to change it. If you only want to change one word or you want to change everything. Now, if you want to change things before you start your document, you can do it at the very beginning. You can change it before you've started typing too. So let me show that as well before I forget. So I'm going to go ahead and show that before I go any further. So I'm going to just create a new document here real quick. Document, and I'm gonna, oh, I have to, okay, so it's every time I create a new document, I have to reshare so that it shares the new document. So, okay, so here's a new document. We've got Calibri 11. Let's change that right away. Excuse me, I'm gonna make it Arial 48, make it red and bold. Excuse me, like that, okay? So you're not limited to typing everything out and then changing it. If you know what you want, you can do it first. Okay, just gonna not save that one. Excuse me. Boy, I apologize for my coughing there. All right, let me go back to my PowerPoint. Oops, sorry. Okay, so basically, again, it's everything going step by step through how to do things with the fonts. I do have some additional resources for you if you're interested. GCF does have a Microsoft Word tutorial. Gale courses, if you have a Champaign card or have Gale course access through your home library, they do have a series of Microsoft Word courses. I have worked through them myself too, and I do think they're worthwhile. Those are 6-week courses taught by instructors. We do have some LinkedIn learning videos that are useful. And then Microsoft has some Word training as well. There's Word for Windows, and then there's Word for Mac. And you can find those on Microsoft's website. And then if you go to support.microsoft.com, they have basically a knowledge base where you can type in what you're trying to do, and it'll pull up results of how to do it. Okay. And then we can also do Book of Librarians. So if you'd like to have a one-on-one consultation with us, you can go to champaign.org/bookoflibrarian. And then there's a form that you fill out. Just let us know what kind of thing you're looking to learn more about. You can also, if you have a specific question, you can reach out via chat or email. Let us know. I've had people do this before after they've taken the Word workshops, have called me up when something changes. and they don't know how to fix it or things like that, we're here to help. We can help with those things too. Okay. Like if your ribbon disappears and you don't know what to do, call us, we'll help you. Okay. Videos we do put up on our YouTube channel, champaign.org/YouTube gets you to the launch page for it. And then you can watch this and other webinars. And we will send out the video to link to the video for everybody that's attending today. And then our next 2 workshops are going to be part 2 and part 3. Again, we'll cover inserting things like shapes and pictures, formatting paragraphs, margins, all that kind of fun stuff. And then here is my contact information if you'd like to get a hold of me directly. And I want to say thank you all for coming today. Would anyone like to ask a question out loud too?
We do have a raised hand, so let me go ahead and allow them to talk.
Excellent.
Okay, your microphone hopefully is able to be unmuted now if you wanted to ask your question.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing the PowerPoint at least.
Okay, I'm not sure if they know that their hand is raised. But I should also mention, let me switch my video on as well. I should also mention that we have Microsoft Word on the library computers. So if you're interested in practicing with Microsoft Word, playing around with it, feel free to come in, log into one of our computers and have at it. You don't need a library card to use our computers. You don't need really anything other than your name.
Yes.
And yeah, you can get started working on Microsoft Word. We have a ton of other software on there as well.
Yeah, and we have the full version. So if you were trying to decide whether or not you wanted the full version versus the free version, you could come in and use our desktop version, which is the full version. Thank you, Rebecca. That's a great reminder.
Yes. Okay, let me try again with this person who may have their hand up.
Okay.
Okay, did you have a question?
Oh, so yeah. Can you next time can you teach a little bit slowly because somebody in English is you don't is fast, so big fast.
Yeah. Did you put the subtitles on too? I know that sometimes helps too, to do the live captions.
Yeah, because today you are too much fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should also say we'll also be sending out the link to the recording. So if you're interested in watching it again, and I know sometimes it takes more than one viewing to take everything in, especially since we cover so much, you can always watch the video later on YouTube. And of course, we'll send that link out once it's ready from YouTube.
Yeah, and the video will also have captions too. And
Okay.
those we've edited too. I know sometimes Zoom gets some things wrong.
Okay, okay, thank you.
We edit those for YouTube.
Yes,
yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And actually it did go a little, was a little fast today, I agree.
I think with YouTube also you can change the speed. I may be wrong, but I think you can also change the
slow
speed.
it. Yeah, you
so
can
I'll
do
send
it
out information on that. Let me write that down.
I think you can do it at 0.5 playback instead of 1 to have it play back a little bit slower too.
I know for me, if I'm learning something new, I'm like constantly pausing the video because I'm like, okay, let me catch up on that.
Yeah, especially when it's the step-by-step stuff where I'll pause it and be like, I'll watch it all the way through. Then I'll go back and I'll be like, okay, wait, pause, do the one step, pause, do the next step, pause. Yep. So,
and that's what's kind of nice about having the recordings is the first can kind of just wash over you and then you can revisit it again and hopefully pick up a little more each time you watch it.
Exactly. And I recommend that too, because it is with technology, it's a lot like learning a new language, right? There's vocabulary terms. There's also if you don't practice, then you won't get to the point where you're feeling more comfortable with it. So I do really like that we have these videos now that everybody can watch it. And sometimes there's a lot of time between when we first teach something and the next time it comes up in the class rotation too. So
Mhm.
sometimes having that refresher of going back to the video and watching the video before attending the live workshop sometimes is kind of nice too, because we try not to throw too many curveballs in. It's really only if something has changed with an online platform that it might be a little different from the video, but we try not to throw curveballs in unexpectedly.
Yes. And I mean, a lot of learning is trial and error. I know for me, I like to learn visually, and it helps me to be hands-on a lot. So for me, if
Same.
I'm learning like a new program, I like to have it maybe an activity for me to try to work towards, and that way I'm hopefully using some of those tools while I'm trying to learn.
Yes.
So that I can find out what they do and how they affect what I'm working on.
Yeah, and we do have an activity sheet for Word if people would like that. You know, we can send that out too, because for some, I know it's better to have a concrete list of things to do as opposed to just being like, play with it. You know, you'd rather be like, okay, we're going to change this word. We're going to make this word, you know, Arial, and we're going to make it 15, or we're going to highlight this word and then change it and make it yellow. So if you'd like, we do have activity sheets like that we use for the in-person workshops that we can also send with the follow-up email if people would like sort of the more structured time on your own.
Yeah, I like this activity.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
We'll send it out then.
Okay, thank you.
And
You're
our
welcome.
hope is eventually we can go back to the in-person stuff too, where we'll have time in between the demo and have a live time for people to practice too. So we'll get back there. But thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
And I'll keep that in mind for next week and the following week too, if you think you'll be
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for us today? I don't see any so far, but feel free to write them in the chat, or of course, raise your hand if you're interested.
Or email us afterwards too, if it comes up later. I know sometimes it'll be 11:30 at night and I'll be like, I wonder about that, and then I will
Yes.
then I will reach out too. And if you send it at 11:30, I guarantee you I will get back to you. It may just be the next day.
It should be. You shouldn't be on your work email at 11:30.
Yes, the library is not open until 11:30. 9 o'clock. If it's before 9 o'clock, I might get back to you. That's our closing time during the week. So
yes, I think that about covers it because I don't see any more questions, but of course, reach out if you do have questions after we end today. And then we hope to see you next week for Microsoft Word Part 2.
And if there's anything specific that you want to learn about Word and it's not included in these 3 weeks, please definitely reach out and let us know. I always tweak these classes based on what people are looking to learn. So if there is stuff, if you really want to learn about mail merge or something else, please let us know so we can fold those things in too, because we're always happy to either create a totally new course, a part 4 that's full of questions that you have or things that you really want to learn, because we want to make them as useful as possible for people. So, you can fill that in. We have the survey link that we have a feedback form, and there's a survey link, and you can add in that. There's a spot in that survey where you can put what courses you'd like to see too. Doesn't have to be related to Word specifically, but if you fill out that survey and let us know what other stuff you're looking for. We had someone ask about selling on Etsy the other day, so I've got someone in mind who will probably come and do a selling on Etsy class this summer. So I always want to hear from you and try to come up with courses that work for what you want to learn.
All right, I don't see any more questions, so I think we'll go ahead and call it a day.
Great.
Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Bye.
Hope to see you next week.